Excellent. So, armed with this information, armed with all of these categories and definitions, what can our listeners do to make the world a more sensible place for data scientists practicing, for data scientists interviewing, for data scientists hiring?
That's a loaded question. So for the hiring side, right? I'd love to see hiring managers or organizations have more reasonable expectations and the kinds of, like really try to map what are their needs to the skills and competencies that they need, and not make people go through like rigmarole of hoops and take home assignments and trivia problems and things that are not applicable to the core skill sets that you need to do for the job. That's on the hiring side. On the growth side, on the personal side, on the skilling side is you have a roadmap, and you don't have to check every box, as John said before. You really don't. You can't, because it's going to take a long time, and time is finite. But you should have general knowledge of all of these things, right? It's going to be hard. You can't be an expert in every single part here. It's impossible. I mean, I've been doing this for 15 plus years, and by all means, there's a lot of holes in my knowledge, and I think it's unreasonable to expect that level of mastery. Again, kind of back to the unicorn, because I feel that that's what sometimes it comes across, is that expectation that you need to be a master across all of these areas, and it's just unfeasible.
Brilliant. Yeah, that is a great tip. I mean, I agree 100% that it is insane how the standard in data science interviews today has become, this, getting deep into the theory of decision trees or transformers or whatever, when the practice of the job in most roles, and again, there's exceptions, that
Yeah,
kind of
of course,
stuff,
of
those kinds of
course,
evaluations
of course.
are make sense if you're going to be a researcher at Google DeepMind. But for most data science roles, it should be about applications. The kinds of things that make somebody a great data scientist are their grit, their perseverance, um, their
Curiosity is a
curiosity,
big one. Yeah, and you
communication
you can't you
skills.
can't teach curiosity. Like, that's one thing that you cannot teach. I think you can build it, uh, but I think it's part of those core skill sets. And the reason I say why is because your work, like, I can right now I'm working on some stuff, and I'm looking at data, and I'm like, this is wrong. Like, this just doesn't make sense. And you kind of have to start thinking, okay, like, where is this data coming from? How is it generated? Like, who's creating this? Like, I want to know, like, what the upstream data source is. Again, these are just like really small examples, and I think a lot of it's just driven by curiosity, like just like wanting. Again, I think I consider myself like an everlasting learner, and obviously I think that for me the teaching helps with the learning, because I always want to be up to date, like a perpetual student, I guess, for lack of a better term. But I've always been very curious, and I think that's a benefit. And if you can definitely build it, but just ask questions and ask questions and ask more questions.
100%. All right. Well, fantastic, Mark. This has been an eye opening episode. Thank you for your work over the past decade, defining these kinds of categories and making it easier for us to understand what it means to be a data scientist, for providing frameworks for the kinds of skills that everybody should be learning, and for providing us with a kind of sense that we shouldn't be overwhelmed, because these kinds of expectations heaped on us by job descriptions or by hiring managers aren't realistic. But the kind of framework that you've described today, where there are some baseline skills that everyone should know, but there are also these domain skills where you can just pick ones that you like, dive deep into those, find JDs that feature those, and find a company and a hiring manager that is willing to be realistic about
Yeah, and I think
people's
that's
depth
the
of
that's the
knowledge.
hard problem. Unfortunately, that's a hard problem. I think some organizations are better than others in that respect. But if you come in armed and saying, okay, look, if this, part of the reason why you want to know about all of these things is because you also want to ask specific questions, right, about the job. Like, what does the job really entail? If it's something being, and I think we've all had our our fiascos over the course of our careers, where we go in and for an interview and they're looking for X and what they really want is Y, but they call it X because that's what everybody else is calling it. If you read Analyzing the Analyzers, there's a couple of like stories there so about that, and that's not new. But it also helps you frame yourself, right? To be that problem solver for whatever the need is of the organization.
Nice.